Last year we staged 6 talks, and I talked to a lot of people about what companies excite you in the London tech scene, and TransferWise comes up again and again. Let's go back. It was mentioned that you were the first employee at Skype. Tell me how you go from working in that company to starting this company.
I think, first of all, my journey getting into Skype was also already kind of entrepreneurial. So I ended up meeting Niklas and Janos when they had sold Kazaa, and they were at that point not really the famous entrepreneurs they were, but rather renegades on the run from everyone else. And the decision to join them can also seem already a crazy one. You have 2 guys who sold the company who are not most welcome entrepreneurs by many lawyers in the world. So already deciding to join them, I think, is a little act of faith, and is an act of looking for something more exciting to do in the world.
Mm-hmm. So if we start with Skype, as you mentioned, Kazaa was a peer-to-peer sort of music sharing or file sharing service, sort of like Napster. So these guys were effectively pirates, right, at the time. So you decided to join a band of pirates.
I'm not sure anyone ever has put it in this exact way, but I guess technically, Matt, you're very correct. It was a band of pirates, and thus I should pull out my pirate costume and wear it proudly.
What was it about that idea, Skype? It's hard to look at something like that this far on, because now, of course, Skype is probably Europe's most noted tech success. It sold a couple of times, first to eBay for $4 billion, and then was sold back to the founders because it turned out that the band of pirates didn't actually sell the underlying technology that made Skype possible. So they bought it back, and then they sold it to Microsoft for $8.5 billion. So a great success. But when you look back at what Skype was in those early days, what excited you about it?
What really excited me was the fact that Niklas and Janos had built something which was disruptive. When I joined them, we had no idea about Skype. I joined them when Kazaa had been sold, and I knew these 2 guys who had caused some mischief in the world already, and I figured they're not done yet. So I actually joined them when we weren't working on anything particularly. It was about 6 months before even the first idea for Skype was around, and the first idea for Skype was pretty far from what Skype became. So I really joined people, and I think that's what happened in the world in general. People join other people, and they join people with ideas and whom they believe can make a change and can make things happen.
What was the original idea for Skype?
Skype started as a Wi-Fi sharing thing. It was the year 2002, so Wi-Fi was still pretty new, and the idea that you can use your computer and not be tied to a physical cable was quite exciting. And we started working on the idea of, can you share Wi-Fi in any way? So very similar to what Phone is nowadays, and a couple other companies. And then as we were working on the Wi-Fi sharing idea, we were thinking about, so what can you do with Wi-Fi sharing? And then kind of a light bulb went on in someone's head, like, can you make phone calls over Wi-Fi? And then as we started thinking about, okay, can you make phone calls over Wi-Fi, we realized, can you make phone calls over the internet? And we realized that there's a lot we can do there, and that kind of bundled with Niklas's telco knowledge, because he had spent a long time at Tele2 before, which is a Scandinavian telco, and from there on the idea started taking shape.
And what was your job? Because you were based here in London, and Skype, like TransferWise, which we'll get onto, sort of split between London and Estonia.
So actually, I'd say Skype was started in Estonia, because it took us a while.
Were you based there then?
I was, yeah. I was born in the Soviet Union. I grew up in modern, independent Estonia, and I moved to London some 7 years ago.
Okay.
But Skype was started in Estonia. And when it was started, it was really the tech team, and then it was Niklas and Janos. Mm-hmm. So I started out working with the tech team, managing parts of it. and then went on from there to do everything which was new, which we had no idea how to do. So at one point it was, hey Taavet, we need to do something on mobile. Next day it was, Taavet, can you go and launch Skype in China? And from there on I went on various projects and missions around the world.
Why was Skype started in Estonia? We will get on to TransferWise in a second, but it's interesting because both of the founders they're not Estonian. I know Niklas is Swedish and Janis, is he Danish?
Yeah.
So what was it about Estonia that attracted those guys there?
That's a long story, which basically had to do with knowing some people in Estonia. Okay. So essentially, I'd love to say there's a better story that Estonia had 10,000 engineers and Niklas hired McKinsey to find the best place to build a company. Sadly, it's not so. Just Niklas knew a couple really good engineers in Estonia, started working with them to build Kazaa, and then everything else was kind of built on top of that. So
the TransferWise story, as I understand it, really started when you moved to London. Is that correct?
Very true. So at one point in 2006 or 7, I moved from Estonia to London, but I still stayed on the payroll for Skype in Estonia. So every month I had to do a walk of shame and go to the local bank branch in Tallinn and transfer my living cost to London. And every month as I was doing it, I was realizing that, first of all, it's really awkward to go to the bank and stand in line every month. And second, when I send €1,000, I'm expecting to receive £800, if I look at the exchange rate on Reuters. But in reality, I receive 750 or like a different amount. That's when I felt the frustration of, first, it's a really awkward process, and second, some of the money just goes missing.
So how long did it take you to sort of click that this frustration could be a business?
So when I had the frustration, it took a little bit until I met Christo, who is now my co-founder, and then we discovered this neat way of doing money transfer in a peer-to-peer way. Right. So essentially, I transfer money from my account in Estonia to his account in Estonia, and he transferred money from his account in London to my account in London, and we do it based on the mid-market rate as reported by Reuters. So we did it with Christo, and then we had actually a bunch of people, and we had a Skype chat where we would say, hey, I need £2,000 in London. And someone said, yeah, I need euros in Estonia, so let's make a swap. Right. We had a little virtual trading floor of a kind. And but then I was really busy building Skype because it was still super exciting and fast growing. And Christo was busy in this evil world of management consulting, but he was enjoying it. So we weren't thinking about it quite then, but then a little bit later, when we were both thinking about, okay, what do we want to do next, is when we started working on the idea for TransferWise.
So how long did you do this sort of informal TransferWise with, is it Christo? How long did you do that before?
4 years.
4 years?
Multiple years.
Okay.
So
but you had to stay on top of the exchange rate. I mean, it sounds like it actually took a bit of work.
No, but the idea of this is based on trust. So because I know Christo, then I can say, okay, so I'm going to transfer €2,000. We look on the exchange rate and see, okay, €2,000 equals £1,500.
Right.
And I trust him to send me £1,500, and I send him €2,000. So it's just as easy as logging on to Reuters or going to Reuters website looking at the exchange rate.
Yeah.
But trust plays a key role here. I wouldn't trust this guy here, if he told me that send me £1,500. Sorry.
Yeah, but actually, and that's kind of what you're asking these guys to do, right? You're handling their money.
Yeah, but we are the trusted middleman. So given that we've transferred more than £1 billion of customers' money, I think we've earned a bit of trust and will continue earning more trust. Yeah. And we're just saying, hey, you wouldn't be able to find this trusted individual, but you can trust us as a company. We have Richard Branson and Peter Thiel as investors. We're here for the long term. We're not looking to rip you off. We're looking to build a business which helps people.
Right. So tell me, going back to turning it into a business, how did that happen? Were you still with Skype at the time, or had you already left?
No, I had left Skype already, and we went about it in a very entrepreneurial way. So I was thinking about doing something entrepreneurial, Christo as well, and we realized we have this little let's call it a little method for exchanging money. And then we realized there are so many other people who need the very same thing, but the problem is they don't have the trusted friends they can use.
Right.
So we thought, okay, could this be turned into a business? And I was like, yeah, there are many people who need it. Millions of people need to transfer money internationally all the time. And there are multiple ways of doing it. First of all, you can go to a business school and you can start writing business plans and spend many months or years doing research and then go knocking on investor doors. But we went about it in a slightly more modern ways, I guess, lean startup or entrepreneurial scrappy way. We built a prototype. We applied for a license with FCA. We got our first license, and then we launched it. And we saw it. The best. The real test is, will people use it? The test is, are you building something which is valuable to people? So we launched it. And when we launched, all we did is we contacted TechCrunch, and we had an article published in TechCrunch, which said, hey, these are guys who are building a new peer-to-peer foreign exchange service. And that article was published, and then 15 minutes after that, the first guy sent us £2,000. That was a moment of shit. What are we going to do now? Because we weren't quite ready for that. But that was a very strong signal that there's something here that people want, so we better get on with it. But what we launched back then was a really scrappy, non-professional looking website. Something which, to build a site looking that way shouldn't take anyone more than 8 hours.
And you guys are pretty slick now. So how much money did you have ready to deploy when you launched? Because you have to have the money. I mean, we should probably explain how TransferWise actually works, how you manage to not charge people the fees that they would get charged if they sent money via banks.
So the whole idea of TransferWise is peer-to-peer transfer, as I explained a moment before. So basically, if we simplify the world to London and Paris, people send money from London to Paris, and people send money from Paris to London. And all we're doing is we're matching these money flows. So essentially, there's no need to move money from London to Paris because there are people who need this money in London. So we're just doing matching between two pots of money, let's put it this way. So there's no need to move the money because the money already exists. And that's why we can do it much quicker, and we can do it for a very low cost.
But that also requires you to have money ready to use or deploy in different markets, does it?
No, it actually doesn't, because so it requires a leap of faith that you have people on both sides.
Right.
And to be honest, when we launched the service at first, we never promised anyone to make a money transfer. We told people, hey, give us your money, and then we're hoping we can match it with someone else's money.
Sounds a bit dubious. I'm not sure I would have given you my money.
That's why I think the first guy who used us deserves a medal.
Yeah.
He should be a hero.
Yeah.
Because literally,
give him his £2,000 back.
We never promised that within X hours or days it's going to be done.
How did that work? Because that just sounds like a tremendous leap of faith. There's a lot of organizations that will encourage you to give up your money for something down the road, and they generally keep your money and don't give you anything.
We promise people a better world, an easier way of doing things which doesn't involve the bank.
Right.
I would guess that if we ask here, then most people are pretty dissatisfied with what they're getting from their bank. So we promise people a break from their bank, and we promise them a service which is faster, easier to use, and saves them money. So who doesn't want something which is faster, easier to use, and saves you money?
Good point. What was interesting is when we look at tech, the idea of early adopters, they tend to be like, trendy kids or people who just live for tech. But these were not necessarily your customers.
We got people from all walks of life. We had, obviously the first guy who heard of us on TechCrunch, I think he was from the tech world. Right. But then pretty quickly we started finding little pockets of customers. We had, and we still have lots of retired people, lots of pensioners who are Brits who have retired to south of Spain or south of France.
Yeah.
And they get their pension paid every month, and it's not a large amount. So losing £25 every month to transfer a pension is actually really meaningful. Right. So these people are using TransferWise on a monthly basis to get their pension transferred from here to Spain.
And how did you break through that with that message? Because now you talk about taking on the banks. Was that the message from the outset?
Actually, no. When we started, we called it peer-to-peer foreign exchange. Who the hell knows what that means?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what that means.
It took us a while to realize two things. First of all, what we're doing is what people refer to as money transfer.
Right.
And second thing, what we realized is that we are, I wouldn't say we're against the banks. I think banks are good for many things, but when it comes to money transfer, it's something which we can do much better than a bank.
Mm-hmm.
But what we realized is that people come to us having used the bank previously. So it's easy to kind of position us that here's a service you get from a bank, here's what you get from us. So kind of just to visualize in people's heads that we are the anti-bank in that sense.
Right. When did you realize it was going to be, I mean, it's a difficult question, but successful? I mean, was there a point at which we thought, well, this is actually gaining momentum, having been part of what was an incredibly successful startup with Skype?
Do you think it's successful now?
Well, I guess I say that, but Peter Thiel, this American investor who you're probably all aware of, was one of the founders of PayPal and the first investor in Facebook, recently called Europe a slacker with low expectations, but he's invested in your company.
But he made an exception.
So in that sense, you have Richard Branson as an investor.
He's no slacker either.
Yeah, he's no slacker either. I mean, you certainly have the attention of a lot of significant people who are smart with their money.
I'd say if all we can do ends here, then I wouldn't call it a success. I think we've achieved quite a bit, but I would say we're still just getting started.
Right.
If I look at the world of money transfer, there is so much we can do. We're touching the tip of the iceberg. So I think there is way more that I would personally like to do before we can call it a big success. Yeah, I mean, things are going well.
Mm-hmm.
Things are definitely successful, but I don't think anybody could or should sit down now and start celebrating.
Okay. So I want to ask you about the investors, but when you talk about that sort of larger goal, it's interesting that you say that you're taking on the banks, but in a way you're taking on a fraction of what they do, money transfer. It's a small part of what they do. It's where they make some decent money, but do you have a vision that extends way beyond that into other services?
It's a good question. I guess we've dreamed about it, but money transfer is so big. It's going to take us a while to achieve our goals in money transfer. So I think it would be a mistake for us to start thinking about any other thing besides this. Mm-hmm. One of the things you learn as a startup is that being focused is so damn important.
Right.
And you can only really be good at one thing at a time. So for us, it's about being really good at money transfer. So we've transferred more than £1 billion now.
Right.
But if we think about the world, there is between 5 and 10 trillion that gets transferred every year. We shouldn't rest until we get into the hundreds.
Right.
And then we'll see.
Companies like to scale and make more and more money, right? Obviously, you will do that as you build volume, but you're still taking a very small fraction. How do you become the billion-dollar, $100 billion company that we're seeing out of Silicon Valley here when it seems like you're saving people money?
I have a very realistic plan. How do we get to transferring 100 billion a year?
Right.
So there's another company called Western Union which transfers less than 100 billion a year. So they're a fairly big company. So I do think there is plenty we can take on, and that will build a very nice and sustainable global business.
You're based here in London.
We're actually now right by the Silicon Roundabout,
okay.
also Roundabout. We have our office of our own now, which we're very happy about.
So you have 160 employees, you said, and 40 of them are here. So tell me why you've chosen to have a big center in Estonia as well.
So kind of when we got started, we were thinking about what's, we are building a low-cost service. We have to think about what makes sense for the company. We know lots of really smart people in Estonia. So it kind of, and I can talk more about why it's not a good idea as well, but it kind of made sense to use the really smart people we know in Estonia and whom we can trust.
Right. And
to start building the company with their help. And that's why now we've ended up with having more than 100 people in Estonia and 40 people in London.
Okay.
But in retrospect and in general, I do think that it's much easier to start a company being physically in the same place. Because when you're starting a company, you have so many things to worry about.
Yeah.
So having extra communication overhead, extra travel and stuff to do, doesn't make sense. Don't take on more problems than you should.
You're saying that you think you should stay around the same table as long as you can.
Yeah.
And that's because you don't really trust Skype anymore.
Nothing much to do with Skype, but in general, I couldn't live my life without Skype. So I think Skype is a pretty awesome little thing.
You're not from the financial, you don't have a financial background per se. I mean, one of the things when people talk about the London tech scene, they say we have these areas of expertise across multiple disciplines, and that's why you're seeing fashion tech and you're seeing fintech grow up. Does it matter to you at all that London is a financial center, building TransferWise here?
I think being in London is great because it does have this combination of finance and tech, and we do work with many banks and other companies. And having these companies here close by to us makes a lot of sense. It does make things easier.
You're saying that you're taking them on. Don't they kind of resent that to some extent?
No, it's the same thing as you go into telcos. Orange hates Vodafone, but at the same time they also exchange lots of calling minutes and cooperate on the other side. So we work with banks because we pay banks fees for the services we get from them, and banks are really happy about that.
Wow. What kind of fees do you pay the banks?
Sadly, pretty large fees.
Really?
Because we are processing our payments using banks, and we're paying them fairly for every transfer that goes through them.
So we mentioned a couple of your notable investors. Richard Branson, of course, is one of Britain's best-known entrepreneurs and investors. What did that do for the company to have him come in and not only give you money, but pose and give you sort of promotional material?
It gives us credibility. So when we went back to the trust question, I think us being able to say that Sir Richard Branson is an investor in TransferWise helps us overcome some of these trust questions. So I think that's a really, really important thing for us. And also he is, I would call him the original disruptor. He knows a lot about how do you disrupt different industries, and being able to tap into his knowledge and experience. And then being able to say that he's an investor, which gives you more credibility, makes it very much a no-brainer.
Has he given you any advice on how to attract more attention?
We haven't specifically spoken about this, but I'll bring it up next time.
Well, because you guys are all over my Facebook feed. He's like hugging you and stuff like that. Peter Thiel, so he's an interesting character. He tends to be quite opinionated. What's it like to have him as an investor?
He is one of the smartest people I know, and really helpful for talking about big problems.
Right.
Helpful for talking about 3, 5, 10-year plans.
Right.
And you can see him getting excited about, okay, here's the problem. Let's think about what we can do. How do you position yourself? What do you do about it? So it's a privilege and an honor to meet and talk with him about these things.
It's interesting because in Thiel's case, of course, he, along with Elon Musk and others, started PayPal, right, which was a money transfer service of a different sort. So is there anything, is this an idea that he had considered, or, what is it about TransferWise that appealed to him in particular?
It was a very easy sell to him. And as a matter of fact, Max Levchin was an investor in TransferWise even before. There was a third co-founder of PayPal.
Okay.
It was pretty easy to explain to him what we're doing, and to get him excited about this. And if you ask him also, he says there's so much more that they wanted to do at PayPal.
Right.
So maybe it's part of what he wanted to do at PayPal. I don't know, but it's I think it's fintech and building better financial services is something which he is no stranger to.
Do you see yourself as disrupting the banks?
Yeah.
In a large way, or just?
I think the banks are being disrupted from 12 different angles. So it's going to be a death by 12 different cuts. But only if they don't get their act together. I do think that they know what they need to do, and if they speak to customers, they'll find out what is it that people expect from a bank.
Right.
But if you continue offering the same service in a bank branch that you offered 15 years ago, then sadly there's no place for you anymore. But if they would look around to find out what do people expect from them, they find it out, and I bet they know. So I'm very sure that the banks, some of them will get their act together, and they'll be offering great services down the road. But right now is a great opportunity where lots of stuff in the finance industry is being rebuilt, and banks are busy with lots of other problems of their own. So it's a great opportunity to build a lot of these things and to show the way, and surely the banks will catch up. The same thing that happened in telecommunication with Skype, and the same thing has happened in many other industries before.
Thanks a lot for getting this year's Cass Tech Talks off to a great start. It's been amazing to watch the success of TransferWise up until now, and I wish it, long may it continue. Thanks very much.
Thanks, man.